They talk about my grandfather's closing argument. He described Leavy Deas' place as being a place like heaven before the bleachery came and a place like hell after it.
In 1929, the Bleachery, Rock Hill Printing and Finishing Company, opened in Rock Hill for the first time. And Rock Hill Printing and Finishing Company began dumping millions of gallons of untreated wastes into Fishing Creek. At the same time, in the same month, that the stock market crash happened in October of 1929. And so, beginning with the crash in October 1929 and extending for the next 8 or 10 years, the country was mired in the Great Depression. And Rock Hill was extremely lucky that a business like the Bleachery happened to open in Rock Hill at the same time that the Great Depression was starting. Levy Deas was born in the late 1800s. He was an entrepreneurial person, created a number of small businesses. He purchased an old grist mill and cotton gin located southwest of Rock Hill along the waters of Fishing Creek. He put that mill into operation and became part of the farming community in that part of York County.
He was just a very gentlemanly businessman. When he made a statement, he stayed with it. He had such a mindset of what was needed and what would be needed for many, many years for the upkeep of his family and everything.
Well, the farmers complained of a number of different problems associated with that pollution. Again, they talked about if people came in contact with that water, or if the cows went into the water, that they would come out of the water with no hair left on their legs. The game warden in York County organized an experiment at Leavy Deas Pond on Fishing Creek. And the game warden had caught a group of catfish somewhere else that were healthy live catfish. They submerged them in the water, and within 30 minutes, all the catfish were dead. The Bleachery's pollution was impactful and really triggered this lawsuit because the volumes were so great. The Bleachery was dumping initially 2 million gallons of untreated waste into the Fishing Creek tributaries every day. The creek that runs closest to the Bleachery its official name is Watkins Branch. It became known unofficially in Rock Hill as Dye Branch because that creek would run the color of whatever dyes were being used at the Bleachery on that particular day. There was not really any governmental agency charged with overseeing the pollution of streams at that point in time. So there was just really no one that Leavy Deas or the other farmers could look to for help. They had to take matters into their own hands.
Well, Mr. Deas was the plaintiff. I think he had a good case for he was more affected than some of the others, I think. And the amount of chemicals coming out of the Bleachery was in such a volume that it changed the nature of the creek. While there were other plants putting wastewater into the creek, they didn't have the same kind of chemicals that the Bleachery had. They didn't have the volume of chemicals the Bleachery had. But that was the Bleachery's defense, was it's everybody else. It's a nice plant, it's a different textile plant, so it's everybody but us.
Well, Mr. Deas risked his reputation, risked his livelihood. He was running a business. This was not an easy thing for him to do. He was not a wealthy man. He filed this lawsuit in 1931. It went through a number of preliminary court hearings. The bleachery tried to get it moved to federal court. The bleachery tried to get the charges dismissed. A lot of preliminary things. This didn't go to trial until 1934.
The delay from the trial gave some time for the situation to get better. Going to those different sites, for the jury to be there, it's always unusual to take the jury to the scene of an accident, but it's not unprecedented. I mean, it was done from time to time. The case had gone on for over a week. The jury was deadlocked. Without seeing the place, they would not come to a decision. And so the judge allowed them to go there. The jury didn't see the same thing in December of 1934 that they would have seen in August of 1931. I think the jury found for the defendant because there was a lot of conflicting evidence. They were smelling bottles of water, and it's just nothing scientific about it. And so they couldn't see the case. The case today would be presented in a more scientific method, and I think you might get a different result. The case was a big deal. Even though the plaintiffs lost, they helped the situation.
I was very proud of him and his accomplishments over the years. And I look at him and I see how he looked forward. He was always looking for the next thing that he could make better working.
Mr. D's recognition at the Freedom Walkway is a different case than many of the past honorees. This is a case of Mr. D's fighting an environmental injustice.
To the urban industrialist, the farmer's in the way of progress. To the farmer, the new plants ruining my way of life. They talk about my grandfather's closing argument. He described Levy Deas' place as being a place like heaven before the bleachery came and a place like hell after it. I also think this case is not just a 1930s case. This is a case today. Fishing Creek's threatened. I'm on the South Carolina Environmental Law Project Board. We've fought cases along Fishing Creek as late as the last several years where they want to do some mining along the creek or do some things. So I think this case has a lasting impact.
He didn't give up. And I feel sure that in Leavy Deas' mind, when he was fighting and keeping this problem before the eyes of the people in the community and throughout Rock Hill, I think he was looking into the future. He knew the damage that could be and was being done by the misuse of chemicals. And he kept his word. That says a lot for people. He was probably getting a lot of bad words said about him, but he stood up for what he believed in. And I appreciate that in my grandfather. I do.